Welcome to the Active Coaching, the podcast from Ag Leadership. We're a leadership and performance coach training company focused on developing exceptional leadership coaches for modern times. My name is Phil Askew, and each week on this show, I'll be joined by a member of our brilliant alumni, putting a voice to their very own hero's journey story. Our hope is that listening in to real-world stories of everyday people who have chosen coaching as a vocation will serve to demystify things and help you decide if this incredible vocation is something that calls to you too. So with that, let's meet this week's guest. All right, so thank you so much for being on the show. It's really lovely to have you here. I always kick off just by asking a little bit about your niche or those people that you feel called to being in service of. And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about who it is you work with and what's important about those people.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm excited to be here and grateful. So when I founded my company Imprint in 2009, mission is helping individuals and organizations leave a meaningful imprint on our world. So who I love to work with are big-hearted, big vision leaders who are even emerging into that space. So one of the areas of opportunity in working and supporting them is a lot of times there's grand ambitions and there's the tension, right, between current realities and how to live into that more fully and really in the face of challenge, stay connected. And that's the work that drives me, whether it's in a corporate setting or nonprofit.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a vital role for them, isn't it? But it feels like a vital role for a coach to be able to support those people. And I make up that those people that you work with are doing meaningful work that really matters.
Yes. And in a lot of ways, that doesn't even have to be in every context super grandiose. A lot of times it's how do we, right? That relationship continues to evolve. And with that growing awareness, and people can really deepen into what's possible, even in the face of significant setbacks or things that we don't anticipate. I mean, we're in a time, Phil, in history, I think we're facing like a lot more than we've faced before collectively. And so part of what inspires me is with big thinkers and people thinking out of the box and doing things that are stretches that it gives me hope, right, for a better future. And that's why I think ultimately what I care about being a part of it from a collective sense, which is what I love about our profession.
Yeah. Oftentimes I think about coaching, and when I have conversations with people who are coaches or coaches in training, we all share something in common. It's like we want to leave a mark that enables people to leave the world better than they entered it. It feels to be a really important motivator and driver behind every coach. In fact, I've not spoken to any coach, not on the podcast, but in my 16 years of being a coach, that doesn't matter. That's not like the primary importance, is to really make a difference in the world in a positive way.
I love hearing that. And that's been my experience as well in 16 years in this. And I also just want to say there's a little bit of audacity, right, in stepping forward. And that was my own experience to say, hey, I don't know yet exactly how I'm going to do this. And yet I believe it's possible. I feel that. And I want to move forward into this uncertainty. Right. And it doesn't go away. I wish I could say after 16 years that I'll just resolve this. I
suppose it's new challenges as well, isn't it? So we have the original challenge that maybe our clients bring us in for, and we start to work with them around that. Maybe it's setting a goal, maybe it's pushing through an edge or a challenge that they're currently facing that they feels insurmountable. But then the minute that's resolved, it feels like there's more further down the line, and there's more that kind of comes to the surface because we are ever evolving creatures, aren't we?
Yes, it's beautiful what you're saying. One of my catalysts for getting into this work was I hired a coach myself. And that felt like such a radical investment at the time. My husband was in a transition, starting a business. We had a 6 and a 4-year-old. I had this sense that this was a possibility. And yet it was right in the middle of the Great Recession. And my dad, I remember I called him and he was like, oh, Michelle, I love your optimism. This seems like really like a radical time to be making this decision. Nope. I had a strong sense we were going to do it. And I will say the power of my first relationship with a coach was life-changing. And it sounds like a cliche to say life-changing. I had
Mm.
not had that sort of relationship and space to actually consider things from it in a different way, like what I
Mhm.
really wanted, like without an agenda, if that makes sense, Phil. So
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
gave me the
yeah.
courage actually to say, okay, I'm going to roll on coach training. I'm going to
Yeah.
get an ACC. I like just kept taking
It
steps. Yeah,
yeah.
with the power and support of this like incredible human.
Oftentimes it's like a pivot point, or it's something that occurs in life where we feel like, okay, I'm going to actively find someone to support me on this journey. And we make a decision, if we're informed, around, okay, is that person a counselor, are they a therapist, or something else? And like you were saying, if that's around about 2008-ish, 2009, when you first
Yeah.
went and found a coach, I'm curious if you're willing to share, what was it that you were experiencing where you felt, actually, I need some support around this, and also why a coach and not someone else?
No, I'm super happy to speak about this. While it has an element of sadness and sorrow, I had a loss, my brother Matt, 10 days after 9/11, that
Mm.
actually just radically changed my way of thinking about life. Like it was not expected. And I was grieving that for a long time. I had anger. I had my children during this time. I'd stepped away from my work. And I'd done therapy. Actually, we'd done some marriage and family therapy. I'd done some work myself. And I think by this point, I think around 36, I
Mhm.
just had this, I don't want to say it was like a darkness in some ways. Like I just felt like there was something more for me to be offering. And I was like, I want to act on this in a different way. And I'd heard about coaching actually more in the executive space, not so much like life career transition. And actually, I had people say, oh, you'd be a great coach. I was like, I don't know what this actually is. I think I just need a coach before I can be a coach. And of course, like most things, as soon as I started talking to a few people, someone was like, oh, I know a coach in New York. Oh, I know a coach in California. So I got introduced. I had these 3 conversations, and then here we are.
Mhm. Amazing. Wow. Yeah. Oftentimes it's something big, isn't it? It's something not necessarily insurmountable, but something which causes us to question our identity sometimes, and question our direction,
Yes.
and oftentimes questioning our purpose is a big word, but more questioning our direction and where we're pointing the rest of our years. And something like losing someone, or grief, or whether that's losing a job or losing somebody you love, often brings into the equation these big questions, doesn't it? These big insights of, wow, what life is short. What am I doing with my life? Is it where I want to be?
Yes. And I think what you're maybe sensing into, Phil, is so here was my story. And then in partnership with my husband, he had gone through a significant, he was part of that Great Recession and was impacted. And actually, that afforded him an opportunity to think differently.
Hmm.
And so it was this collective meeting, right, that I believe was meant to be. We paid
Hmm.
attention to what was there. And it really, I mean, it took a lot of courage, took a lot of support. But I'm reminded, even when I forget about that part, just how powerful connection is. And people show up. People showed up for him, for me, for us, right? It all
Hmm.
happens in relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
That things start to mobilize and a new future starts to take foot.
Yeah. It's like fortune favors the bold, as they say. It's like if you don't take a chance, you don't stand a chance. All these good metaphors. All these good
Right. I,
I think what I'm saying is, when you lean in and you start to look for not necessarily even solutions, but you start to question and you start to hone your antenna to finding a new way of being, or a new experience, because this feels so stuck and rigid and confusing, then I think we start to notice different things. And I think people respond in different ways, and opportunities come our way as well. And I think this is such a fantastic illustration for why coaching works as well, isn't it? In the sense that you have an ally, or a thinking partner, sometimes I call them, where they're not judging you, and they're sat with you, and they're allowing you to offload and share, to create this space for you to be able to really explore what's there for you, And oftentimes that's like the froth on top of the head of the liquid, and then underneath it, underneath the surface, which is maybe somewhere that we haven't actually explored before, suddenly it starts to surface because it has the space to be able to do so now.
So well said. I love that metaphor.
Mm.
Beautiful.
You started to see a coach as a client or as a coachee. You started to see a coach. And how long was it before you decided, yes, I think I want to give this a go? It's very often not
Well,
very long at all.
and I'll tell you, I was a little bit scared because things started to move quickly. And so my
Mm.
coach was part of this A team for Laura Berman Fortgang, who was one of the early coaches, right?
Mm.
And was pretty prominent, had been on Oprah, and she had a program called 90 Days to a New Life Direction, which I was using
Mhm.
as a structure and a framework for exploration with my coach. And she said, Michelle, we have a training on this program happening in 3 weeks in New York. You can come stay with me and my husband. Laura will let you in, even though you would be the one person who hasn't done coach training yet. And I thought, whoa, okay. So then I thought, okay, we're all right, say yes.
Mhm.
And I ended up going, and that was confirmation I'm in the right space. It's like
Mhm.
I found my people. And so I came back and I was like, I'm committing, starting the beginning of the year, I'm enrolling in my coach training program.
Mm.
So that's it.
Yeah,
I hired her in August. I was at that training at the end of September, and I
there
was
you
in
go.
full coach training by like
Yeah.
January 2009.
But it's interesting, isn't it? I think some people might go, "Oh, what is that? Is that a cult or something? Do they draw people in and get you on board to buy their courses?" But no, coaching is just, there are obviously non-legit coach training schools out there. But if we do our research, there are some incredible ones, obviously including ACT. And it sounds like your training was incredible as well. And so it feels, I think once we've tasted coaching and once we've been experiencing it, as in we've been sitting in the space and receiving coaching, there's something magical happens. It's like alchemy. It's just, wow, this is incredible. And it feels like if we are the type of person who demonstrates the ability to hold space for another, I think it feels like coming home, doesn't it? It's, wow, this is coming home. This is something I want to pursue myself.
That's how I felt when I arrived with that first group in New York. And I was like, wow, I
Yeah.
want to be a part of this.
Yeah. I love it. Oh, amazing. And so that was like 16 years ago. So you've been a coach as same sort of amount of time as me. So we've seen a lot in these years in the coaching world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
massive shifts and
Ma-
changes, which is,
Yeah.
yeah, wild.
Yeah. I remember in the early days when I was trying to find sample clients, people to practice with, they, especially in England where I was from, people didn't understand the benefit of it, and they thought it was something made up, and it was just like, oh, okay, I'll entertain you with this thing. But then eventually, as the years went by, and I think as more coaching landed in companies and more people in companies and marketing was getting better and clearer, people understood the benefits of it. Suddenly it was like much more commonplace, much more household.
One of the things that I was so excited about when I got my first corporate opportunity, it was more in the training change management space.
Mm.
And I have my master's in education, teaching was my first career.
Mm.
And yet coaching was the piece that was missing at the time from the model we were working with. And so I was able to actually introduce and bring that in.
Mm.
And it was so cool because that's what really started my curiosity around leadership. Yeah, we can have all the process piece, right? And actually change systems takes quite a bit of time. And yet the leadership, the evolution of leaders, their consciousness, what
Mm.
that can impact on the day to day in
Mm.
their, like, not just in their work lives, also in their lives. That's
Yeah.
where I really started to get this kind of fire and fuel. And
Mm.
one of my clients, Phil, actually gave me this book called Conscious Business that just really spoke to me. It's integral leadership. And so a lot of my following the strands led me into doing work with this partner organization, a tremendous growth opportunity for me and my own leadership.
Mm.
So I just look back at so many key milestones where once again, like I was ready, information showed up, then the people showed up. I said yes again and walked through a door feeling a little terrified. And then it's was a completely different way of operating for me, of being in the world. It's a different level of trust. And
Yeah.
yeah,
So you are a facilitator for ACT. You're one of the ACT leaders.
yes, yeah, it's been
Yeah.
fabulous to see their
Yeah.
growth and be a part of the faculty.
Yeah. Can you say more about the experience of that? What is it like training other people to be coaches? What is that?
Yeah. So I super appreciate you bringing this part forward. It just seems like I'm in this sweet spot at this stage in my own growth and development, and actually my desire to give back in a bigger way, knowing
Mm,
I've had 15, 20 years. And so part of this in the past 2 years has been really prioritizing doing the work in the LPCC program with ACT. And I
mhm.
just found it so incredibly rewarding and meeting people from all over the world, amazing individuals, right? Such high caliber, both faculty and the participants the program attracts. And there's something really special about the way that this program was designed. In many ways, I feel like it's taken so much of what I received as training, other deeper work I've done in leadership models, and infused them in this really brilliant yet digestible offering.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the beauty about the LPCC program, I think, is one, it has a real clear direction, as in we're training our students to be brilliant coaches, but not only that, brilliant coaches in the field of leadership.
Yes.
So supporting other leaders to do amazing work in the world. So that part feels like really unique because there's a lot of coach training schools out there who train people to be coaches and give them a set of tools, but then they don't necessarily say where they can apply those skills and those tools. It's just you're a trained coach now, off you go. And I think often people, when they've had training in that way, can feel a bit lost where to direct their skills and tools. Whereas I think with that, because it is focused on leadership and it really covers a lot of ground when it comes to actually what is a good leader, like how do leaders need to be in this day and age in order to be great leaders. I think it really has something very different about it.
Yeah. And one of the things that I really appreciate is that grounding in the neuroscience as well as the art, right, of working experientially, right? And the program is
Yeah.
so experiential, which speaks to my heritage as a teacher. And so I just think it's a brilliant infusion, right? Very
Mm.
grounded and yet invites people out of the headspace into what it takes to really connect deeply and move people, which is what I really think leadership is all about.
Yeah.
Moving, influencing
Yeah.
consciously.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And I think because ACT offer the program in a sort of virtual format or a hybrid format or face to face, don't they? So there's this lovely, whatever calls to you in terms of the training that you want to get, I think it's there and available. And it's different, isn't it? To be trained in this stuff virtually via Zoom. I never used to think it would work, but it does. It's incredible. I suppose I've been on Zoom for like years and years. Day one of Zoom, back in the days when it was Skype, and I'm sure you were. So
Yes.
we understood that these modalities work incredibly well. Like doing something virtually has just as much impact as doing it like face to face. But it's different as well, isn't it? So if you're doing stuff virtually and then you're doing stuff face to face, there's a different energy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I actually appreciate that I get the opportunity to both. I was just out in Rhode Island a few weeks ago with
Oh yeah.
Robin Rose. We launched a new cohort. So fun.
Um,
Second one I've done since the pandemic back in person. And then I was this week back in virtual, and both incredibly rewarding. And yet, as you say, brings a different energy and actually takes the thoughtfulness, which I appreciate in the design. That ACT has been
yeah.
so thoughtful about how to best be agile in these different contexts.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's great if you're deciding to do the blended kind of hybrid version. And so you just face to face training. I think you get the sort of in the room experience of what it's like to move around, the somatics of what it's like to be a coach in your body and what it's like to sit opposite someone and experience Brown, which is like a stunning venue, isn't it, as well? It's just beautiful. And Rhode Island's absolutely beautiful as well. But then when you jump onto Zoom, it's like a different flavor, but still the same people that you've been working with in the room. So it's really good, I think, to do the hybrid version because you get the range. You get the range of what it's like to work with clients face to face, but then also virtually too.
So well said.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. And I suppose just moving into a place of, if you've been a practicing coach for a while now, which you have, I'm very curious as to how the experiences of being a coach have impacted your personal relationships as well. As in, oftentimes we listen very different, don't we? Once we've had coach training, or we give more pause for thought when someone's speaking to us, and we listen in a slightly different way. And I'm wondering how these skills and tools have panned out in your personal life too.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. So my husband, Dan, and I will celebrate 25 years of marriage this June.
Wow.
Yeah. Thank
Wow.
you. That's super significant. We both come from families of divorce and have put a lot of intentionality around our relationship. And by
Mm.
far, the coaching has helped me so much in learning about myself and in how I am with him and how and largely because I've learned to be in a different way with myself. So if that makes sense. And so
Mm.
like when I first started in this path, it's funny because I thought I knew so much, and now I'm like, wow, now I feel so much like a beginner, which is just an interesting evolution. I've had a softening. It's helped me so much with our children, with Addison and Jack. We have a 21-year-old daughter and a 19-year-old son. And just the way we experimented in putting a lot of the practices from coaching into our family, like doing
Mm.
family accountabilities, intentions, check-ins once a week, playing with stuff, not always getting it, like making mess, having some tools and skills to clean up the mess. And I think also just with my own healing journey that I shared with my brother and some other deeper work I've done, that it's helped me tremendously
Mm.
to be more conscious in my choices. That's why we go back to ACT, right? Awareness, choice, transformation.
Mm. Yeah. No, it's so interesting that you say that. And yeah, I feel that it's sometimes it can be unsettling for those people that you go back to, as in after it was like Phil before, coach training, Phil after, or Phil in between as well. And I think sometimes it can be a little bit unsettling for the other person because it does change us in some way, in a very positive way. And I think it brings things to the surface where it's okay, these things need talking about now. I want to really work actively on these components of our relationship.
Yeah.
And I've known a few coaches where that's happened. It's the unwritten disclaimer is, as we train to be amazing coaches for other people, so we must do our own work as well. And it's sometimes we're not ready for that. We're like, oh no, really? I thought I was just learning great tools and I can go away and just do this with two other people. But actually, it's not about that, is it? It's an energy exchange, a two-way thing.
Yeah, no, what you just said is so resonates with me. That was actually like in many ways what I credit the growth of my business to is that one of my mantras for myself was like grow myself, grow my business. And I just kept each year like I'm going to prioritize in many different ways, continuing to be a learner and investing in whatever that developmental opportunity is. So very distinct in different moments. And one of the things I love about Dan, my husband, he's a learner too. And then very different, like he decided he's going to get his private pilot's license. It's really
Oh, wow.
different, right? Process to go down through a learning. And yet what we've noticed in our relationship is both of us continuing to be brave enough to follow these little mini adventures keeps like when we're alive, there's greater aliveness in this space of relationship.
Mm.
And it's a cycle. There's moments in where that
Mm.
out again. And like you said eloquently at the beginning, okay, like then what's calling us next?
Yeah. And it sounds like as well that you're able to be open with each other and frank about the what is next, what's coming up for you. Like, where do you feel the urge or the yearning to explore next? And I think coaches are naturally, innately seekers, aren't we? I don't think that's ever going away.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. So can I talk a little bit about my book, Phil, that's coming out?
Sure. Please do. Love to
Yeah.
hear. Yeah.
And so something that brought that up is part of my seeking that I have a book I've written called Meaning Indicator, Finding Significance Through Challenge, Work, and Love that releases from Collective Inc. Can be pre-ordered on Amazon. It's my seeking that led me really at the end of 2018 into sort of this meaning research project. And really the book's a culmination of all my learnings of this quest of like collecting over 20 assessments that have been done since like 1964 all the way to the present on how we can understand meaning, gathering research, doing a qualitative interview sample with people all over the world, distilling that, and then actually sharing my own 3 life experiences that are most significant in the book. So I'm really delighted to be bringing this work forward. I think it's an important time. And just, yeah, I won't, maybe I'll pause there and then I can share a little bit more about these
Mm.
4 dimensions of meaning and where I think actually within coaching we have an opportunity to go.
Yeah, that's amazing though. I have a friend of mine who says, Phil, you've got to write a book. You've got to do it. And I'm always thinking, I'm not sure I have the patience for it. I'm not sure I would have the patience to go for the whole duration of the book. It was just, whoa. It feels like such an undertaking. I wonder, I guess I'm curious about, like, what was it that fueled you to write the book originally? And also what kept you going? What kept you going through to the end? What was the motivation?
Yeah, so thank you. So it really was, I got this inspiration. I was rereading Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Oh,
I
yeah.
got the actual initial inspiration. I have the page in my journal where I wrote it all. It was deepening. One of those moments, I woke up in the morning, literally 10 minutes. It was like a download. I came and I was like, here's the 7 chapters. Here's the title. I hopped on Google. It was available. I bought it. So a lot of this in my own development, I consider one of my strengths my intuition and this
Mm.
deep listening. And yet then I also have the other side of me who doubts. And so much of this, Phil, was having the courage to stay in process, to keep following the threads, and then building the muscle of like, how do I actually have space for deep thinking and writing? And I wasn't successful for a couple years. I had this expectation that, oh, in the nooks and crannies, being a mom, running a business, like having my space for my husband, doing my community work, like somehow I'm going to drop in 30 minutes and do this deep work. And so I read actually Deep Work by Cal Newport. And after
Oh, yeah.
a couple of years, I said, okay, what I'm doing is not actually working. I'm going to try a different approach. So I designed with Dan, like, I want to go away for a couple of days each month. And I'm going to carve out different space for this. And so actually right before the pandemic hit, my sister and my sister Rachel, she's a writer, and we went and did this first mini retreat. And that launched this different way of working. That was the key. I needed a different way.
That's really interesting. Yeah, that is fascinating. It's deep work. The minute you were describing that, and then you said about Cal Newport's book, I was like, oh, yeah. So I have to ring fence off time in order to, it's like we're on the surface and then it's like, okay, we have this natural arc where we go deep into the work that we want, that's really meaningful to us. Because I can pretty good at strategizing, putting all the points together. But when I need to do my own like passion projects, I really need time cordoned off in order to go deep with them. Otherwise, I feel like I'm just getting into it as the end of the day comes. So I love that you did that. It feels like an amazing structure. And it sounds like you were really listening into what was needed and you weren't necessarily beating yourself up or self-flagellating for not having got this book done in 2 years, which
Yeah,
some people
thank
can.
you. That's part of my growth, Phil. So thank you for seeing that and reflecting
Yeah.
that back to me. And I also, the other key component, I got support. I had a book coach. I had a researcher I had from University of Kentucky who was supporting. I had another colleague out of Buenos Aires who was supporting, who comes from a research background. So I had a
Mhm.
team, and that was key to this and keeping
Yeah.
myself like accountable. And then I guess I'll just say the other piece is I really think after 16 years of listening in so many meaningful conversations, that what I'm most proud of it in the book is that I think it really distills down, like through the research that I did and my own lived experience, truly how people can find significance through our challenges, work, and love. And
Mm.
I think it's practical, usable. We also were intentional about cutting a ton out of the book. It's right around
Oh,
100 pages so that people can read it on a plane flight,
yeah.
knowing how we digest information. And that took actually a lot of skill too. What's not essential here?
Yeah. Yeah. I wouldn't like that part of the job. I'm like, no,
I
I've written
know.
good words.
When my writing gives you like, oh, this is great, Michelle. You need to say all this. You don't need all this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
sorry.
well, you
Let
needed
it
everything.
go. All my
Yeah.
story, all the details.
My goodness.
So
It's like my book in 3 parts, in 3
yeah.
books.
Well, and
This has been a fantastic conversation, really interesting. Thank you so much for spending time in this conversation. And I suppose the last thing I would ask is how can people find you? Like, what's the best way if people want to reach out to you to connect with you?
yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. So Michelle Hollingshead. I have my primary business is Imprint Coaching, and I do have a website for Meaning Indicator. So if you're interested in learning about the book, I have a couple of offers for free download for pre-order. So for those listening, if you're interested in learning about the 4 dimensions of meaning, please head that way.
Very cool. This is the first person I've interviewed who's written and published a book for the ACT podcast. So there you go.
Okay, thank
Really.
you.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you. If you'd like to train to be a professional coach, why don't you check out actleader.com. That's www.actleader.com. On our website, we have a ton of information that can really help you get clarity on the exact right course for you. We also have articles that go into detail about the different aspects of coaching, how to apply it, and why it's a wonderful thing. Look forward to seeing you soon.